This video is a recording of a live event, about an hour and 15-minute webinar, and it's really packed with all sorts of energy healings and information and explorations into the fine abstract layers of creation. I hope you love it. If you do, please like and subscribe. Today's webinar is called Manifestation and the Etheric Body. And what we're going to do, because we've got a lot of new people tonight, is just want to explain. I'm going to describe what energy healing is in a few sentences. And even though a lot of the new people have heard me say this, but it's always good to hear it again from a slightly different angle, from today's new perspective. And then we will go into our period of 3 minutes of silence, where we have a moment to connect up with the source of creation, which is really the foundation of the whole energy healing process. And then I will do a prayer of gratitude. As we're coming out of the silence, we'll do the prayer of gratitude, and then we'll just dive into today's topic. So the preamble just takes a few minutes. All right, what is energy healing? Energy healing is using consciousness to heal the body. It's leveraging the intelligence, creativity, and resource of your divine source, of the foundation of you, the source of everything in creation, as the instrument by which the transformations, evolutionary transformations, are catalyzed or activated at the surface. Healing is about transformation, essentially, and integration. So energy healing is integrative. It not only allows, from the level of your perception and experience, for you to integrate your own capabilities to contact the source of creation and to leverage that potential that's in the source of creation, but it also supports or integrates the intention of the creator or of the source of creation to be ever more fully manifest in the field of creation. When some part of the body falls ill, it means that that part of the body isn't expressing divinity as well as it could. In other words, it means the potential of that part of the body is not fully expressed. And so energy healing is about opening the pathway to allow that potential to shine through. So with consciousness, we go into the root or the seed cause of the illness, that initial blockage that's like deep in the field of consciousness. We're going to talk so much about this manifesting process tonight. Can hardly wait to get into it. But so I'll go into more detail. But basically, with energy healing, what we do is, instead of attending to the superficial symptoms, like the part on the surface, we dive with our consciousness, we dive underneath the surface, and we find the root or the cause of the illness. And it's almost always the blockage is almost always some form of feeling separated from the source of creation in some way. That part of the body feels like it's just not as integrated as it needs to be. And so energy healing is a process of integrating. Then we integrate, and a lot of times that means purifying. There could be like discordant feelings, or some karmic knots, or some structure that's kind of abstract, that's sitting under the surface. It's blocking that particular part of the body from expressing its full potential. So we get into that, and using awareness or attention. And that's like the number one tool of energy healing, is awareness and attention. We go into that area that's not feeling fulfilled and shine the light of awareness upon it. And doing so, we bring all the qualities, we harness through our awareness. Because awareness is being, it is divine being, it is source material. We harness that source material and bring it to that part that's feeling incomplete. And when we bring our awareness there, that starts to activate a completion process, which is also an integrative process. And so what I do, and what we're doing tonight, is understanding the process, like going in and describing blow for blow what's going on in that process. And I know a lot of you guys with me tonight are seers, and you see the process also, which is what's so potent and amazing about working together in this group, is that we go in together and it's like shining many flashlights on the dark area. And when we do that, it just the whole thing brightens up, and so much knowledge comes through, and so much powerful transformation comes through. It's just amazing. So I'm very excited to get started on tonight's session. So that's what energy healing is. Now, the next thing we're going to do, I shouldn't pound on my table too hard. It makes everything shake. Whoa. Now, boom. Now we're going to take a dive with our awareness. We're going to do this. This is the first thing we're going to do. We're going to close the eyes. I'll say, let's close our eyes. We'll close the eyes. And then we will allow awareness to settle down all the way into the source of self, the source of creation. If you're not sure, don't worry about it. Just enjoy your own inner silence. I'm not going to talk for about 3 minutes. And after 3 minutes, I'll say, let's open our eyes. And then we'll open our eyes and we'll dive into tonight's topic. But it's really nice for us as a collective to kind of gather our energies and our resources by having these 3 minutes of silence together. So it's silence, but it's like the silent choir, we're all humming in harmony. So, all right, let's close our eyes. All right. Let's take a minute and then slowly open the eyes. It's so good to come out slowly, giving the body, nervous system time to integrate the silence. I'm going to go into the prayer as people continue to come out. Thank you to the source of creation for being everything. Thank you for being all of us. And through us, bowing deeply to all the ancestors for their contributions to this world. This world that we live in is an outgrowth and a byproduct of their labors and their efforts and their love. Our bodies. Thank you to the eternal tradition of wisdom that is the bridge between the unmanifest and the manifest, the bridge of knowledge. Thank you for our ability to work concisely and efficiently, and for the blessings of the webinar, being together here as a group for the next hour or so, and all that we can accomplish. I am grateful to be with everyone here, and I really hope that tonight's webinar meets and exceeds everyone's hopes and desires for not only very thorough and robust covering of the expression of tonight's topic, but also for beautiful healings. Like, I don't know what healings are going to come out tonight, but may they be useful to all the people on earth and to all of us, and may everyone experience healing through tonight's session. Thanks everyone for being with me. All right. I'm going to open my question box, and I want you to know that the usual pattern that I have going is that I do more talking on Friday night, and then I do more answering questions on Saturday. But everybody will receive all the recordings of the weekend. Whether you've signed up for one session or both sessions, doesn't matter. You will still get both recordings. And those will come out sometime tomorrow. Ooh, already, off from the gate with an amazing question. Does America have an etheric body? If so, what's it look like? And how can we help it? Well, that's such a good question. I love you. I am so grateful for that question. Yeah, let's see if we can address that tonight at some point. Can we? I think I'd like to lay a little bit of foundation, though, especially because we've got so many new people with us tonight. I'd like to lay a little bit of a foundation for tonight's talk, and then we'll dive in to the healings and all the details. All right. So one of the tools of energy healing is the navigational map. And I know a lot of you guys are real familiar with that, but just for those who aren't, I just want to quickly review that there is a range of expression of what we are from the source of creation up through the physical body. So there's a spectrum from like more abstract to more concrete or more dense, and the physical body being the most dense. Well, one layer just underneath the physical body is the etheric body. So the etheric body is very close to physical, and because of that, it has a lot of characteristics or qualities that are very similar to physical. It sits between the physical body, and this is just my arbitrary division of this spectrum, because the range from the absolute to the relative is a continuous. It's like a smooth continuum, essentially. But there are like kind of specific laws of nature that tend to dominate at different points along the spectrum. For example, at the physical level, we actually have physical matter that we can perceive with our five senses, right? All the other layers, they don't have that kind of physicality to them. Just as an example, but there are a lot of examples, obviously. The mental body, it sits between the mental body, the etheric body, which is what we're talking about tonight, sits between the mental body and the physical body? First of all, the answer is yes, everything has an etheric body. Like the earth has an etheric body. Rivers have etheric bodies. These trees have etheric bodies. And America does have an etheric body. So there are these layers: physical, etheric, from the most dense to the coming down. Physical, etheric, mental, emotional. Those are our dense bodies that we associate with this life and this reality and this present time that we're experiencing. And they're bound. Those four bodies are bound in space and time. So we experience them as kind of constrained by the laws of physics and the laws of space-time for the most part. Then at a deeper level, then there's like the aura is just like right below the emotional body. You can think the emotional body is like the body of desire or feeling. And then those feelings, if they get a little bit more abstract, they become more like colors or nuanced frequencies or vibrations, you could say, that are sometimes experienced by those with refined perception as colors. And then under that are the collective bodies, or those bodies that are not bound by space-time. They're outside the constraints of space-time. And those are the astral body and the causal body. And that's the causal body I define as like the deepest, most abstract level of the physiology. And then there are these two layers of what's known in Vedic science as para-prakriti, para meaning beyond, and prakriti meaning nature. So like before anything manifests, there are these two very deep levels of absolute silence and dynamic potential. We could call them that. My friend Andrew Hewson calls them that. I think those are good words. I love the way he uses words, actually. And in the field of energy healing, the field of energy healers don't really have a standardized lexicon at this time. So I think it's nice for us to start to share terms a little bit, because that'll help create a kind of consistency from one speaker to another, so that so the information can come through more clearly for everybody. All right. These are the layers of the physiology. All right, so the etheric level of the physiology sits between the physical body and the mental body. So if we think about the mental body as being the place where we have functions. So I divide the mental body, just putting the etheric into context here, right? Usually I divide the mental body into conscious mind, subconscious, unconscious, and avenue of awareness. And those correlate with parts of the nervous system. Conscious mind, brain; subconscious mind, spinal column; unconscious mind, the extended nervous system; and avenue of awareness, the senses, the sense organs. Oh, sorry, my new camera is really cool, huh? Anyway, yeah, sense organs. As she vanishes into the background. Anyway, yeah, but the mental body also is that part of our physiology, or part of the self, where it provides certain functions, such as memory or analysis and synthesis, and even like the processing of perception, for example, if we're including the avenue of awareness there. So the etheric body has this spectrum or range. It also has like a more abstract level of the etheric body, and then a more concrete level of the etheric body. And it creates a kind of spectrum between the physical and the mental. And so in that spectrum, the etheric body has a form it's very, in a way, the etheric body functions more simply in that if you compare, for example, the physical to the mental, the physical body is more instinctual, right? The physical body just does its thing. The mind is responsible for thinking and deciding and moral reasoning and all that. And the body, not so much. The body is sort of more simple and more, in some ways, directly tied into or connected into the rest of cosmic life. the rest of the universe. The body knows it's like part of the universe. And so it's just in that flow, in a kind of a very simple, almost you could say the body likes to function in a way before the complexity of thoughts and ideas and even emotions. I mean, it responds to them, obviously, because all that's a foundation for the body and how the body ages and how it changes and things like that. But the etheric body is also very visceral in the way it functions, because the thinking is left to the mind, to the conscious mind, or the mental body, and the feeling is left to the emotional body. So the etheric body is like, it has a kind of simplicity about it, the way the physical body does. It's just basically experiencing. The etheric body is it is an energetic map or form of this body. And so in previous webinars, I've talked about it. I think there's a video up online about the etheric body where, you know, I give the example, you can, if your camera works, you can feel your etheric body by putting, because it radiates outside the physical body by a few inches. So you can feel it. You can actually feel it. If you put your hand over your arm, for instance, you can feel the energy of the hand touching the energy of the arm. We did the healing for the wrists the other day. I uploaded a healing for the wrists. You can feel the energy of the wrist. And it's beautiful how a lot of awareness comes through the palm of the hand. So when it goes onto some part of the etheric body, it not only feels the etheric body, but that awareness coming out of the palm of the hand is able to penetrate into the tissues and actually feel in and feel the bones and the connective tissue and the blood vessels and the cartilage and the muscles and the skin, all the layers of the skin. Very beautiful, very sensitive. So the etheric body is a lot like a filter. It is that place where intentions, thoughts, intentions, and desires that rise up from the emotional and mental body meet the physical material field. That's why I thought it would be so exciting for us to explore this topic together tonight, because, and as a group, as a big group, and shine all our lights on it, because something profound happens in that gap between an intention and a desire or intention. And then like when it actually happens, like something amazing happens, there's a transformation that occurs there that goes from, it crosses the barrier between something that's only potential to something that actually is. And the mechanics in there are absolutely fascinating. And I've explored them quite a bit, but as I've explored them, I've discovered that there's a whole rich field in there that's really amazing. So that's why I'm so excited that we're doing this tonight. So just before we go into that gap, though, I think we need to just look for a moment at sort of like the mechanics of how, just a brief overview of the mechanics of manifestation, like how that actually happens. So the source of creation is a field of total fulfillment. It's the resource of all energy, happiness, creativity, intelligence, everything. Everything is contained, it's full. The source of creation is full. And at that level of ourselves, we are full. We don't need anything, we don't have any desires. Because when we close the eyes and go into the silence, and we go into that deep, silent source of creation that is eternal and has always been and will always be, and embraces all of this creation, which is its creation, right? So it includes everything. When we're in that place, there's nothing wanting. But there is this need for the evolutionary experience. And so what happens is, from that state of absolute fullness and fulfillment, the impulse to express comes forth. And as it comes forth, it rises in waves of increasing intensity of desire until it breaches the surface of creation, where the desire, when the desire reaches to a certain pitch, you could say, then it breaks through to the surface and the desire meets its expression as fulfillment. So we could say we've got these two elements. We've got fulfillment and desire. And we've got fulfillment in the source of creation, but as yet unexpressed. And then we've got fulfillment at the manifest surface of creation expressed. So we've got fulfillment and fulfillment with this sort of like gradient of desire in between. And the desire becomes more intense and more intense and more intense until, the desire becomes fulfilled. So we could say that desire is fulfillment in its potential form. Basically, desire is potential fulfillment. And that as the desire rises up to the surface, that potential becomes more and more realized, or closer and closer to realization. And it is the realization of potential that creates a wave, creates like a ripple that goes out into the universe, and at the same time it reflects back to the source of creation, like reflecting back into source and communicating to the source of creation that it has accomplished its intention for evolution. Because a lot is evolving here. We as individuals are evolving, but also the universe is evolving. Also, totality is evolving. You can say, well, God, there's nothing for God to evolve because God is completely full. God is everything. And that's true. But God desires even to have more than everything, to even have the experience of evolution, to even have the experience of expansion. So we have all of it, all of it. Being has all of it. It is everything, it knows everything, and it is expanding and evolving through us as us. Okay. So that's just kind of an overview. We've got, that kind of creates a context for understanding what happens at the etheric level. So what this means, within this context, what it means is that the etheric level of the physiology sits at that point where desire is maximized. At that point where the potential for manifestation is most full in its own self, where it's folded in. This rising of desire to the surface of creation is a process of, it's a self-referral process of the fullness of creation coming out into the like subtle manifest and then referencing back, right? Because with each wave of desire, there's always a reference back to source of like, oh, is this desire going in its intended direction? Something needs to be said here also about, so on this note, I would like to bring in the idea that desires manifest more completely and quickly and in a more fulfilled manner when they are aligned with that, more perfectly aligned with that cosmic intention, which means like the more folds, the more self-referral folds there are between that source of creation and the waves of desire, the more times the desire refers back to the source of creation, the more it's enriched by the resource of divine being, and also the more it remains aligned with the intention of the creator to bring something to the surface that's worth creating. For us as humans, the tool by which that happens is Dharma. We've talked a lot about Dharma, but I just would like to take a minute, especially for the new people, because I don't think the new people have heard me talk so much about Dharma, but we're just going to take a moment. I'm just going to feel into our collective, our lovely, rich, just so robust, full collective here, and feeling into the collective. this cord of light it's from the astral body, which is one of the collective bodies, and that energy cord that runs from the crown of the head down through the body and connects us to the web of life. So beautiful. You are also beautiful. I'm also seeing minor meridians or other cords that are running from that big cord running through the body out into various parts of the body, and particularly to areas of the body that nourish, which is interesting. See, I told you, I don't know what the healings are going to be before we start them, but just gently offering this intention. The cord of light connects us to our own divine being. This gentle intention of establishing Dharma in such a way that desire always follows the path of least resistance. Dharma is that's a Vedic term, everybody, meaning that which sustains the universe. And intentions and desires and wishes that are for the sake of the sustenance and the nourishment, in today's case, also the nourishment of the universe. Those desires carry the weight of universal intention behind them, which means all the laws of nature and all the laws of creation rising up to also support that desire. And when we have that level of support behind our desires, then they manifest really, really effortlessly. But in this case, the desire is turning back on its own nature to establish conscience, also conscience. And like there's a place in the causal field of the body which is for conscience, And that area, that region of the causal body is being infused with Dharma. Again, I'm seeing this really intense, nourishing energy moving forward. And it's moving forward because the needs of the collective are so great right now. We've been through so much, as I mentioned at the beginning, we've been through so much collectively this last year, and even this last week, in America anyway. We've been through so much. And so the energy of self, which is responsible for nurturing and for creating, is activating. Ooh, and this is very beautiful. So sharing with everyone here that the causal regions of the body, and when I say causal, I'm talking about that first manifest level of the physiology where really all the healing comes from this area, right? Because the source of creation is the resource for all healing, and it's the source of fulfillment. And so the first layer of our physiologies possesses the laws of nature that are responsible for the manifestation of great desires, very life-fulfilling, universe-nourishing desires. And we can think of the regions of the causal body as simply subtle spaces that are like resonating spaces that allow the pure energy of being to take various forms. But this form that I'm seeing, this nourishing form, which we've never worked with this before in webinars, by the way, thank you everyone, because of you. This nourishing form, a lot of these forms in the causal body have been identified through various like religious constructs or theories as animate. Like in the past, the ancestors have found a way to identify with various expressions of their own causal bodies by giving them names, by thinking of them as animate forms. That's why sometimes they're thought of as like various angelic forms. Like there's some angels like Archangel Michael protects and Archangel Raphael heals and like that, or Santa Claus, right? Santa Claus is like this sweet person and so forth. There's like all these different forms that we have that are kind of traditional, legendary, mythical forms they all represent different divisions of the causal body. So this particular division of the causal body has been identified as Nandi, the giving cow, There's a name. There's just a name. So I'm just bringing it for anybody for whom that resonates. But whether we call it that or we call it something else, it is an aspect of our own causal bodies, which once identified with consciousness or awareness, and once our awareness, our big, beautiful healing collective goes there and sits upon that, sits in that space that we've created, it activates that space and nourishes it and wakes it up, feeds it. And as that happens, it fills with the light of being. And filled with the light of being, it is able to do what it was designed to do. The laws of nature in that area of the physiology are then able to activate. So as I say that, some of you might get a feel for what that causal space is like. And know that once you've identified it, it becomes an accessible, it's like adding a room onto your house. Once you've added the room onto the house, then you can always go into that room. So it's like that, only it's on the level of consciousness. And that's what energy healing is about. We're actually integrating consciousness, right? So integration is occurring in that area, in that Nandi area, that area where nourishment occurs. And for some people, you might feel that in the breasts, because in the physical body, breasts are the nourishers, right? So this is also healing for that part of the body. Awakening the full potential of this part of the body, of this aspect of consciousness. What Nandi does is Nandi provides selflessly giving. I shouldn't say selflessly, but Nandi provides, we should say unconditionally. That's the word I was looking for. Nandi provides unconditionally. That means Nandi provides resource for everyone equally. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter who you are. Nandi provides equally. This is actually, I saw that question about America up there. And this is part of the story. This is part of the story of the healing for America. We realize that bringing in energy that activates access to the important resources that people need for their personal evolution uplifts everyone to a level of fulfillment where their thoughts and actions and intentions are on a level that is more dharmic for the American soul. We want for everyone, of course. America is such a big, powerful country. What happens here tends to influence in other places, but I'm just feeling now a nice building of energy starting at the root chakra and then going up. It's going up the entire system there, out the crown of the head, that cord of light. The cord of light is able to radiate back to being, because we connect with being out the crown of the head, like fireworks coming up and out the crown of the head and back to being. So it's a kind of bowing down. There's the activation of that aspect of self that provides, and then it bows down to the seat of soul. It bows down to the source of creation. It's a self-referral fold. Ah, I see. I'm learning, you guys. What I'm learning is that this healing of the nourishing ability, the potential for nourishment of us bowing down or like sort of folding back into the source of creation is actually a healing for our ability to manifest our desires. Surprise! Surprise for me. Maybe you saw that coming, but I didn't. Just letting that roll, like the desire that rolls out until it reaches its fulfillment. Just letting it self-refer as many times as it needs to until it, and what happens is as it starts self-referring, it self-refers faster and faster and faster and faster until infinity. At that point, silence, infinite silence is reached. Infinity, eternity. It spins out in both directions, out into the universe, into the manifest fields of the universe, and inside into the source of creation. That's why the infinity symbol looks like a sideways figure 8, right? You've got infinite dynamism, infinite silence, infinite manifest creation, infinite unmanifest. I suppose we could say, well, the manifest isn't really infinite. But it's pretty darn close. And if we think of, from a Vedic perspective, of the manifest as like various incarnations of the divine, and the incarnations can go on and on and on and on and on and on forever, then maybe it is infinite. All right, so I'm just feeling these waves kind of, they rolled up and now they're kind of like settling back in again and they're integrating. They're settling into our physiologies and our systems. And it's causing a lot of light to move into the areas of the physiology that are responsible for nourishment. And it's interesting because I was going to talk about that this evening. Anyway, I had the thought that I would like to come back to this expression of the etheric body again. And that the mental body, has that range between the mental body and the physical body. And that the analysis and synthesis capabilities of the mind, and the mind we can say creates the context for all the mental functions, right? So mind is like the larger context, and then within mind, these processes occur: memory, and analysis and synthesis, and logic, and reasoning, and moral reasoning, for example, and belief systems, creation of belief systems, and creation of all kinds of things. The digestive system, and in fact all the systems, but the digestive system we'll take as an example, analyzes and synthesizes. So there's an intimate connection between the way a person's digestive system functions and the way their mind analyzes and synthesizes their experience. Because analysis is breaking down, and then synthesis is building back up and integrating into useful tissues and materials in the body. We could say, well, okay, respiration does the same thing, right? We take in the air, and there's a kind of a sorting process. It goes into smaller pockets inside the lungs, and then it breaks down even smaller. It goes into the oxygen goes into the hemoglobin, and then and then that's like the breaking down, the analysis side of it. And then it synthesizes, all the oxygen gets taken around to the different parts of the body that need it. And so when our minds are taking in the field of perception through the avenue of awareness, then we're analyzing and synthesizing our experience. That process is absolutely reflected physically as digestion or as the respiratory process. There are others There are other parts of it in other areas. But the reason I bring this up is that one of the great, like really important areas of the physiology that does this is the liver. And the reason I mentioned the liver was I really wanted to, us as a group, as a collective, to take a look at how we interact and how our process of fulfillment, waves of desire, reaching again fulfillment, how that process interfaces with the 5 primal elements. And the reason is, sorry, I have to keep doing this, guys. There we go. The reason, my camera. The reason that I thought, why I feel this is pertinent to today's topic is because the elements, the 5 primal elements, earth, water, fire, air, and space, okay, they have a reality that's on the surface of creation. Like our bodies are literally made of these elements, and so is everything else. Everything is made of these elements. And what shows up at the surface of creation is a byproduct of how these elements in their subtler form before they show up, right? So they have their gross form, but then they also have their subtle form. And in Vedic science, there are names for these different forms. At the surface, they're called Mahabhutas, which means the great elements. Maha means great, and Bhuta means like entity or being. So they're the great beings at the surface of creation that make all this world. And then at the subtle level of creation, they're called tanmatras. And sorry, I'm not analyzing the word tanmatra, but you can think of the tanmatras as some of the Vedic scientists probably know how to break that word down. But at the subtle level, they are like the essence of the elements, the essence. So when the desire first emerges from the source of creation, it hits the tanmatra level of the 5 elements. So it hits these 5 essential components that make up our world. But when they're still in like a very kind of very subtle expressions of them, very abstract expressions of them. And as the desire rises to the surface, it rises through layers of manifestation of these 5 elements. And then there's like this critical moment when the 5 elements go from being like more of like a conjecture, like they're just a sense of them, to actually being on the surface of, like actually being. And that's why I wanted to do this webinar, because this is the seat of the etheric body. This is where the etheric body sits in this system, is like right at that junction point where an intention or an idea actually becomes something. And so it's like very interesting to me what's happening there. Like, what are these laws of nature that are in that incredible dynamic transition point where something that's been brewing for a while actually breaks the surface and like becomes something. It takes form. It takes form. The reason I mentioned the liver is that the job of the liver, the liver is very interesting. It has, according to Vedic science, in Ayurveda, the liver has 5 fires in it, 5 different types of fire element. And these 5 different types of fire element are responsible for like kind of sorting and categorizing all these 5 elements as they come in. So the oxygen-rich blood, or no, I would say the nutrient-rich blood comes from the colon, right? So it's, the nutrients have gone through and they get to the colon, and we're like extracting, wildly extracting all the nutrients from the food. It goes into the blood, and the first stop is the liver. And the liver gets like this big chaos, right? It's this big chaos of all these it's just all these nutrients. So the liver's job is to kind of like sort and categorize. And so it's using these 5 fires, each one a little more refined than the other, to sort of isolate out the different elements. And the earth element is a little more gross, and then the water element is a little more refined than that, and then the fire is even more abstract than that, and air is even more abstract, and then finally space is like the ultimate abstract of the elements. So this is happening in the liver. And we know that we also have mental functions, like that's happening physically, okay? So we've got the physical expression of it going on in the liver, and then we've got the mental expression of it going on in the mind, right? And in the mental body, where where we sort and categorize and we understand our reality. Speech is part of that process, like the different syllables and the different consonants that we produce in our mouth. They represent some of them a little bit more earth element, a little bit more space element, a little bit more fire element, like that. It's like fire element, right? They're each different. Is also very, very sharp, right? But is like softer. It's more like watery elements. And then there's the beatboxer. No, sorry. But you get the idea. We break it down. We understand it. We understand it from the level of name and form, right? So we have names for things, and then there's the form of the thing. And within the name of the thing contains the form is contained in the name, and especially in Sanskrit. Maybe not so much in English, but in Sanskrit, the actual syllables that go together to describe that thing. And this like concept of name and form in Sanskrit is called nama rupa, name and form. So nama means that combination of consonants and syllables, or consonants and vowels that represent the name of a thing. We still use the word name in English, nama. And then rupa represents form. And if you think of how the word rupa is made, it starts out with an R sound in the mouth, and the spinning R represents the wave of consciousness between unmanifest and manifest. So there's a little vibration that occurs back and forth between the unmanifest field of creation and all of its manifested forms. So that's represented in the r. And then rup, when you say p, it's like you bring it out to the surface, right? P, like spitting it out. And then pa, we go ah, which means then it reflects back into wholeness again, because ah represents wholeness or totality. So the word rupa represents the way in which the unmanifest comes out to the surface and then reflects back to wholeness. It comes to the surface, but it is a reflection of wholeness. So this is an example of how the syllables contain within them the form that they are representing. The intelligence of speech, the intelligence of it is a causal form, but it comes all the way up to the etheric level of the physiology. And this is the beauty of the etheric body. It's a map of this body, and it helps us to define divinity at a level where it's accessible for analysis. Also, the etheric body is kind of a holding ground for a lot of emotions and feelings. Just saying. And if there are unprocessed feelings, they'll sit a lot of times in the etheric body, and they don't, if they don't get processed, they can eventually affect the physical flesh expression of the body and eventually take a physical form as illness. So if we can catch imbalances when they're in the etheric body and handle them at that level, then those imbalances do not have to manifest. They do not become illnesses. If you already have an illness, then we can look into the etheric body, and we can find in the etheric body what's holding, what energies are holding at that level, that organ or that tissue or even that function in the body. And by analyzing that, by bringing awareness to that, because the etheric body, it's a little bit like a filter, right? That transition between an intention, desire, and then a manifestation is like, it has to go through a kind of a filter that determines exactly what is the balance of the 5 elements. What is exactly going to be the arrangement of earth, water, fire, air, and space that's going to give rise to a particular specific form? So the etheric body is like a kind of a filter, but it also, I think, for a lot of people, and this is where it kind of ties in a little bit to the question about America having an etheric body, because there's an etheric field, right? There's just like we have a physical body, we live in a physical field. We have our astral body, but it's also within the context of the web of life. We have an etheric body, which is within an etheric field. By the way, if you're not sure what is the etheric field, that's your dreamscape. All dreamscapes occur in the etheric field. So when we're dreaming, we're actually engaged directly with the etheric body. The dream body is the etheric body. Oh, putting a few pieces together right there. It's a puzzle. It's a puzzle, but we're knitting the pieces together as we go along. Dream state. Dream state. And the next webinar will be about dreams. But it's good. We're setting a foundation for the next webinar by talking about and doing healings for the etheric body in this webinar. There's so many places I could go with this right now. But I think what we really want to do is let's just have some healing. Let's just have some healing for the etheric body and for the etheric field. Because as I said, it tends to be a place where we hide stuff. Sometimes we hide stuff from ourselves in the etheric body, or we hide stuff in the etheric field, in people's houses. There'll be certain types of energies that are hidden in certain places, like the backs of closets, right? There's certain places in the basement, right? There's sort of hide certain things that we're like not ready to deal with yet, something like that. But it's all there. Everything that you deal with, it doesn't go away. When we deal with it, we transform it, and we integrate divinity into that aspect or form of whatever it is. Just changing my position a little bit here. So I think it would be nice to do, and I know some good questions have come in. I can see good questions coming in. By the way, everybody, what I've been mostly doing, because we've got 15 minutes about, and I would really like to just do some direct healing for everyone with you guys. Let's do some healing together. What I sometimes do is I answer questions on Saturday. I answer everybody's questions, and everybody gets the recordings. So you will get your questions answered for sure. But so in case I don't get to all the questions tonight. So we're just going to take a minute. We're just going to feel into the etheric body. That's like an energy map of our physical body. That's the body we run around in our dreams. And then we're just going to take a little expand conscious awareness through the etheric body out into the etheric field around us, which is kind of an energy map of the world around you. Kind of looks like the world around you. And the first thing that's clearing looks like illusion. Illusion is clearing from the etheric body and the etheric field. And this illusion is linked to beliefs that are ancestral. They've come through, there's a whole body of attitudes about the etheric body and about the etheric field. And there's an awful lot of misunderstanding, and I'm noticing illusion and also fear is clearing, because there's a lot of fear associated with the etheric field because it's not quite physical, right? It's like we feel like, oh yeah, I can trust things that I can pick up with my gross senses, with my surface senses of perception. But if I can't quite pick it up with my senses of perception, I don't know if I trust it. Also, I'm seeing some connection with the moon, which is surprising me, but is not completely surprising me, because what the moon does is it illuminates the darkness without eliminating the darkness. Kind of like running around in the etheric field in your dreams. It's dark, but it kind of like doesn't look so dark. You can sort of see what's going on in your dreams. But the intelligence of the moon, the intelligence. And of course, the moon is part of our larger body. Like we think, most people think, oh, well, this is my body. Just this part is my body. This is my body. But the truth is that our consciousness is far larger and can expand out to the ends of the universe, even if the body is so many inches tall and so many inches wide. And the truth is that all this universe and all the planets and all this world is also part of our body. It's just that the physical human body is like the sensitive antenna point by which we're seeing the rest of it. So that's like the eye saying, well, I'm just the eye and I'm not the rest of the body. Or your finger that feels. It's saying, you know, okay, I'm separate from the rest of all you guys, all the rest of you body. But it's not. The truth is that it's all really one body. There's only one being. There's one great, huge, eternal being that's all of us. And all of it is also our body. So the moon is also part of our body. It's just like, as far as the finger is concerned, the moon is like the foot or the head or something. It's like somebody's like, the finger's like, oh, are you part of my body? Oh, yes, I am. You know, right? So the moon is there. It's like part of you. It's part of you. It's part of you. It's very easy to feel that energy of the moon. All you have to do is put the attention on the moon. Oh, all the finger has to do is go like that. It's like, oh, I feel the face pretty well. I feel a lot of details in there. Well, it's the same. Put your attention on the moon. You feel the moon, right? It has its own like personality, has its own qualities unique to it. Thea. So the moon, the moon is able to reflect the light of consciousness through our etheric bodies in a way that activates soma. And for those of you who aren't sure what soma is, look on my knowledge base. You can read more about, there's even a picture of the moon on the knowledge base, on the entry about soma. But it's able to like magnify the particular qualities of soma that heal and nourish the etheric body. I didn't know that. Wow. Okay. So that's good to know. That's useful information. Take note. Just the way the moon magnifies the sun's light when it's full, right? When the sun shines on the moon and that light reflects back to Earth, we get all this brightness coming in. So the moon reflects this sort of very soft quality, right? Like if you look directly at the sun, it's like too much. It's too bright. You can't take it. But if it reflects off the moon, when the light reflects off the moon, it's beautiful. You could look at the full moon all night and it would never hurt your eyes. So the moon is able to reflect that quality of consciousness that we associate with the moon, is able to reflect into the etheric body. So it's like it shines into the etheric body and it lights up the soma in the etheric body. And by the way, for those of you who don't have time to look at my knowledge base right now, soma, in a nutshell, is the finest byproduct of digestion, right at the junction between manifest and unmanifest. Just saying. And it feeds the intelligence that heals the body. This is what soma does. This is its job in the body, is to heal, is to feed the intelligence, is to nurture and uphold and uplift the intelligence that heals us. Definitely feeling some purification. And the purification is in the entire front of the body. So like face, neck, chest, abdomen. This is kind of like the vulnerable side of the body, right? Like if something's coming at you, you kind of like turn your back like if it hits me back here, it's not going to hurt as much as if it hits me on my tender underside, right? So it's like the purification is from this underbelly side of the body. And that's where the fear and the illusion are clearing from sort of this sort of tender underneath side of the body, which also is associated with sense of self, because we identify ourselves more by features on the front, like our facial features or, shapes and forms on the front of us than on the back of us, right? Like sometimes if you see someone from the back, you're not sure, oh, is that my friend, right? Like how many people have seen them and said, oh, so-and-so, and then they turn around like, oh, sorry, you're not who I thought you were, So yeah, it's the front, which is connected to our sense of self or ego. So it's really ego or sense of self, which is also healing in this part of the session. Of course, healing for ego is really incredibly supportive to allow us to self-position in such a way that we can ride those waves of desire to their fulfillment with grace. Because when ego is kind of gripped by the relative expressions and is too kind of caught up with like the outcome, right? You're in a process and the ego gets a little caught with well, I'm afraid the outcome isn't going to be what I want, or, or I'm worried that it won't come out at the right time or whatever. Then that type of thinking can actually inhibit this evolution of fulfillment from the source of creation through to its manifest form. So the support for the ego is always to increase flexibility, increase the definition of sense of self, to include the moon for one thing. Because when we recognize, oh, the moon is part of me, and that the way the moon interacts with my etheric body supports healing in my etheric body, then all of a sudden that healing process is an internal process. It is a self-created fold of consciousness within one's own nature. I'm checking into threads in the web of life that are rolling through our collective to support the healing, making sure it's just like clear, like to support that the healing is fully valuable for everybody in the session. Just checking any little spots. Any little place where someone feels like, oh no, I'm not good enough. I don't deserve it. I can't really call the moon my own. Yes, you can. We can all call the moon our own. Is it our moon? Yes, it's our moon. It's very interesting what's happening. I know there are great questions coming in. I'm sorry. I want to answer everybody's questions, but I just have to say this one more thing. It's so interesting, is that the integration of our moon, and while we're at it, the other planets of our solar system, our sun, the integration of our planetary system with our consciousness and with it's like the finger realizes, oh, these other fingers are also part of my own story, and so is the hand, right? It's like it's realizing that when that happens, this has an effect that changes. It changes the context in which we interact with these heavenly forms. And when we change the context of the way we interact with them, that also changes the context by how they interact with the rest of the universe. Oh, see, it's very interesting. So it's like it expands out. And this is a lot how, remember I was saying like the infinity symbol, when the fulfillment comes to its point of expression, then it reflects both out into the creation and also into the source of creation. It's like tuning the planets to send a message to the rest of the universe, or at least to our galaxy, to say, hey, we're a little more integrated than we were. We got it together over here. Just that's it. Simple message. It's just a small message, but it happens just spontaneously because of what we did. Ironically, on the heels of yesterday's demonstration that we almost didn't have it together. I'm just coming back. We just have a few minutes, but I want to come back and at least give, since I've been addressing this question about America's etheric body, I'm going to go ahead and give it some completion. And then tomorrow we will start out diving into your questions. So, but right now, does America have an etheric body? I think we've established yes. America has an etheric body, and the etheric body of America is what we as individuals would think of as the etheric field of America. So when you're dreaming about America, you're basically interacting with America's etheric body. America's etheric body, it says, what does it look like and how can we help it? America's etheric body is, everything is within the context of this, what I call the divine dialogue. You can look that up on my knowledge base, divine dialogue, it's on there, which is the wave of intention from the creator, from the source of creation, up through the creation and then folding back again. So there's this cycle of creation that is constantly happening in every point in creation, everywhere. And America's etheric body is kind of within the context of that cycle, is on an inward stroke like that. It's going in on itself. So it's not in the expanding out like I'm great, it's on the coming in part. And along with that inward dive, there's some purification always, because in order to dive back into the source of creation, one has to let go of all the extraneous bits, all the pieces that grip us and hold us into the relative level of creation. But it's also a flow, there's kind of a flow of bliss, because it's like going home, right? When we go back to source, it's like going home. So even though there's a letting go on the surface, there's also an attainment of ultimate fulfillment happening as well. And it's requiring, what we're doing as a collective, we're just focusing our attention on the etheric body of America. And as we do that, our attention nourishes and uplifts and upholds and creates wholeness. It establishes wholeness. It establishes that state of divine expression. So I'm just describing it. One of the effects of this inward stroke of the etheric body of America is sort of more self-sufficiency. So Americans are already quite self-sufficient in a lot of ways, but even more self-sufficiency is stabilizing. what what's needed here, what I'm seeing, is we need some integration between the individual parts and the government as a collective representing the collective. The parts in the whole. The parts in the whole need some support. Oh, it's the ego, right? Because this is what the ego is. The ego is a spectrum of sense of self between individual ego, I am only my physical body, nothing more, and universal ego, which is I am the totality. And this is your ego, my ego is all this spectrum from the point to infinity, from the individual to the universal. And the ego of America, it's undergoing some purification. And what that purification does is it routes out the stubbornness. It routes out the inflexibilities. It routes out, again, the same things as illusion and fear are clearing. And by clearing illusion, what we're doing is we're setting the stage for truth to establish. And that means truth. That means media, the media being more holistic in its presentation, right? Instead of just reporting just the symptoms and just the symptom, going down and what's the reason for the symptom. And for clarity for all the individuals in the country to be able to decipher what is a conspiracy theory, right? And what's real, what's actually real. With the internet, it's super easy now for conspiracy theories to just like propagate, like they just come out. Speaking of something is manifesting, but we're not sure it's in line with cosmic intention, right? we need to get into the truth. So what needs to, as the illusion and the fear clear out of the ego, and that helps to create some pliability and some flexibility in the ego so that even when symptoms appear on the surface, it's possible to pull back and to look at that, to witness that symptom from a place of stability and certainty, like that. Stability and referencing and a place where one feels stable to reference absolute truth within. The source of creation is that home of pure knowledge and pure truth. And there's spectrum, because there's that political spectrum, right? From the left to the right. And it's very, very interesting what's happening as the ego becomes more flexible and more pliable so that the American ego is able to embrace its full potential, we could say. At the same time, the extreme tendencies, which are born of small ego on both sides of the political spectrum, are centralizing. Ooh, that's good for America. More moderate, more moderation, more moderate thinking, more balanced thinking. And more clear discrimination and recognition of what's absolute truth, what's pure truth, what's the real truth. And when we say real truth, what we mean is looking past the symptoms on the surface and going into what's really essential. What is the essential issue at hand? And one of those essential issues, I think we actually fulfilled earlier tonight in our healing when we discovered that home of nourishment. Because really one of the issues, and I think this isn't just for America, this is for all the countries, is access to resources. That, we're all different. Our intelligence and creativity runs in different lines, but everyone deserves access to the resources that they need to evolve. And when we say evolve, we mean to be able to embody divinity fully, to embody your full potential. You need these resources. When we have these resources, and when the individual is full, becomes full in their own nature, in their own potential, and in their own sort of establishment or integration of divinity, then all the desires come. Then the desires come so easily and so effortlessly, right? It's like when the cup is full, then it just, all the things that we really want and we really need, those are the things that come. Thank you for the amazing question. And thank you to everyone. And I promise I'll write them down. And tomorrow we will start right out with questions. And there's still a few points. I think there's a little bit more we can explore about the elements, the 5 elements, because I want to, like, this gap between where the elements are more of an abstract concept and then the point where they're actually manifest, like that gap has like a lot of potential to explore. So I'd really like to, maybe as we answer the questions, we'll go deeper into that gap, because there's some very interesting stuff there. There are mechanics there and laws of nature and forms, which I didn't really get a chance to bring out tonight. So I hope that we can look at them together, because with your light added to my light and all our lights added together, we'll be able to really illuminate what's going on in that gap, because it's a kind of a mystery, which is why I wanted to do the webinar in the first place. It's like, hey, let's explore this mystery together. So tomorrow we shall do it again. For those of you who will be with me tomorrow, I see you here at 1:00 Central. For those of you who won't, for those of you who tonight is your only session, you will get the recording. So everybody gets equal distribution of resources. All right. Thank you, everyone, for being with me. It's been really fun. We'll do even more tomorrow. Bye-bye.